Hello and a very warm welcome to you all. I'm Vikas Nangia with another episode of CyberWatch, a program through which you get the news, views, and insight on cybersecurity. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our news analysis edition. And so today, with our special guests on the program, we'll discuss about the cybersecurity news that made headlines in April 2024. My first guest on the program is industry veteran. He is Lalit Ahluwalia, the founder and CEO of DigitalXForce and iTrustXForce. My second guest on the program is Desiree Wilson. Desiree is the Chief Client Success Officer at DigitalXForce. Lalit and Desiree, thank you so very much for joining us for this special episode. There was constant buzz in the cybersecurity world, and so we'll take some of those news that made headlines in April 2024. So allow me to start with the first news. United Health pays over $3.3 billion to providers after Change Healthcare cyber attack. Now, this attack actually happened in February, Lalit. I remember you gave a great insight on it, but there's a built-up on it which says that in the aftermath of a devastating cyber attack on its subsidiary, Change Healthcare, United Health Group has paid out a staggering $3.3 billion to affected healthcare providers. The disclosure, of course, comes months after the company revealed in February that a cyber threat actor had breached part of Change Healthcare's information technology network.
Yep. So because this really goes back to the reason and the purpose of why we do this CyberWatch.
Right.
Because it's not just about the organization, if you really look at. The effect was when the subscriptions for the patients were not getting filled. So who was getting impacted? So business getting impacted because they're paying financial remedies to really recover the systems. Yes, there's a business loss for them, financial loss for them. But there's also for people who are wanting those services, unable to get those services from the providers. And that's a ripple effect coming. And why that's really happening? Because some of the poor practices, lack of cyber hygiene, that organizations should be doing fundamentally, but really not have in place. For example, who holds my critical system accounts? Who is really monitoring, who has access to that? And not be able to apply the defense in depth mechanisms. We always say 2 layers of it coming into the system, one the password, but the other one, the factor that only you know, coming in as SMS token or outside token and other things or biometrics, right? This is a combination of a privilege account that has access to more than what a system user would have access to, combination of lack of defense in depth, and of course, the other layers of lack of what's going on in the system.
Right.
But what really happens is 3.3 billion, just do the maths.
Right.
It's not a small sum. That means the kind of impact that really made. Now, in order to make it correct, probably you don't have to spend 1/10 of that.
Right. Right.
Or even even a lower sum. But this is in one of the episodes, we'll talk about the pre-breach and the post-breach mindset.
Right.
When I'm already kind of in the accident mode, I'm sorry, doctor, please recover me. I'm on the deathbed.
It's late.
I was spent. But I could have protected myself to be in the accident mode to not even get there with lower sum. The shift has to happen.
Right. Desiree, I remember a few weeks ago, it was a great pleasure interacting with you on Digital Trust. Now, in a situation like this, companies such as Change Healthcare, do they lose the digital trust?
Absolutely. As a client, a customer of Change Healthcare, your private personal health information has been exposed. And so, of course, you're losing a lot of the trust you had in that organization.
Right.
You thought you were safe, you thought your information was safe, you thought your health needs were safe, and now all of that has been compromised.
Right.
So you have to now second guess them and make demands on how they're going to protect your information and protect you as an asset to their organization in the future.
The next news that made headlines, check fraud plagues millions of Americans and small businesses. A recent report from Abrigo has revealed that 45% of the respondents reported being victims of financial fraud, with 17% of that group specifically experiencing check fraud, potentially impacting over 20 million individuals.
I know I was extremely surprised by the amount of people impacted by check fraud, because I don't see that checks that often. But as it turned out, check fraud is actually the #1 most used form of financial fraud. So there is a lot of it going on. And to actually prevent it, you know, people would have to contact the providers or confirm the checks are correct or verify before depositing. I mean, it seems like there's a long rabbit hole to go down to prevent this type of fraud.
My question to you, Lalit, is what do you think? What possibly are the flaws where the check frauds can happen?
So this is where, like, you know, there's always that mindset of technology versus business comes in. I think Desiree made a very good observation. But we didn't even think, like, you know, check fraud could be like an as prevalent, because we're thinking about the credit card theft.
Right.
That's the most common method of, like, really doing a business transaction or financial transactions. But put the perspective of small and medium businesses.
Right.
Let's say commercial property. A lot of tenants still pay, like, you know, a monthly check or like the Zelle or like other things. So it's a combination of the two.
Sure.
When the checks come in, they're electronically deposited. Or small businesses receive checks from like other providers because they cut out that way.
Right.
Or there's the like, you know, check, like, you know, options that you pay your you know, community bills and stuff.
Sure.
Home association bills. A lot of them system because they want to avoid the credit card fee.
Right.
Think of that, what the element is, the credit card fee. If in order to avoid that, you can do the e-check.
Correct.
Option. The method here is that the verification of e-checks is very limited, like to, like, you know, what you're really submitting and is really going. And there are a lot of like ways you can interface that. I can really, number one, attack in the middle and the check amount goes somewhere else. Not to your actual bank account, going somewhere else, because that's really the financial motivation.
Correct.
If my transaction is not secure or I'm not securely deploying this, that could be easily redirected that. And that's what really happens for the most part.
Right. Right.
On the other hand, like, you know, other than the redirection, it could be the amount transfers, like, you know, the segregation of that. So there are a multitude of ways, but the motivation is very financially driven, and hence why you see those, like, you know, common mechanisms. The business use case still holds true.
Well, in another news, cybersecurity communities are on high alert as an alarming trend emerges: the sale of remote desktop protocol access on underground hacker forums. The illicit trade possesses a significant threat to individual and organizational cybersecurity, potentially granting unauthorized access to sensitive information and critical systems. What would you say?
So people have to pay a very special attention to this. I just had like one similar scenario where the remote access through the compromised credentials led to one of the tax, you know, attorney, like, sorry, the tax attorney, but the tax consultants getting hacked in the servers. And that was the whole remote desktop protocol. Now, whether that was like a mechanism like this, or they, like, you know, found or hacked into to the compromised credentials, but the same thing, no line of defense other than compromised credentials, I was able to get in. They went into the systems, they changed your tax, like, you know, data to show the losses so they can get the refund, and then change the banking details to, like, redirect the funding.
Wow.
To a different account, which was like their own accounts, or the dummy accounts where they want the money to be gone, and use the same credentials and the same methods to log into your e-file system and file the e-file taxes. Now, half of them go rejected, half of them go supplemented, where the money is gone.
Right.
More importantly, what's the significance to that small or medium business now? The accounts that got compromised, would they trust to really come back in the system?
Right.
But the method that you talked about, the remote desktop, if you look at, like, you know, when you, like, try and, like, say a machine is not working, you call the Dell or the Microsoft, they remotely dial. They don't come to your house.
Right.
They remotely dial into this. You give the credentials. This is what it's signifying.
Right.
That somebody, like, now gets hold of that, your machine, your servers, and everything remotely, and there's no lines of check. The havoc it can cause.
Right.
Especially in the small or medium business, which do not have really the lines of defenses already put in place.
Right. So what's the lesson learned over here, Desiree? What would you say as a cybersecurity expert? What protocols should the companies be following?
Well, companies, as always, you have to do more to protect your internal assets. You have to take those extra steps, those extra measures to ensure that credentials are updated, that you are using MFA, that you have the proper protections in place for access control. Because when you don't, these things happen.
Right.
And then as consumers, we need to be more adamant with these organizations that we're not going to take it anymore.
Right.
And I know that's a hard position because obviously we require working with a lot of these companies to be able to do business and function and run our normal everyday lives. But we really have to take a stand and make it known to them that we need to be their first priority.
Sure. Well, we'll take a quick short break over here. On the other side of the break, ladies and gentlemen, we'll resume our conversation with Lalit and Desiree. Remember, today you're watching the CyberWatch News Analysis Edition. We're discussing on the news that made headlines in April 2024. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back. You're watching CyberWatch. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our news analysis edition. We're discussing about the news that made headlines in April 2024. Lalit, thank you so very much for joining us. Desiree, thank you again for joining us. Dropbox, the popular cloud storage and file sharing company, has disclosed a significant data breach affecting customers of its electronic signature service, Sign, formerly HelloSign. The breach has compromised sensitive user data, including email addresses, usernames, phone numbers, hashed passwords, account settings, and authentication data such as API keys, OAuth tokens, and multi-factor authentication details.
Yes, well, I feel like, we're on a constant loop here. It's a consistent failure to protect data and information.
Right.
And we are here again, and now, we're talking about Dropbox, but it all comes down to the same thing. We have to be vigilant about protecting our client assets, our access control to our information, what we're doing to secure it, what we're doing on a daily and continuous basis to make sure that that information is protected from those constant threats. And the threats are real, they're out there. So rather than us coming from a position of thinking we are already safe and secure, we should be, looking at our environments and searching for those threats, doing the threat hunting, looking for any vulnerabilities in our system to prevent these types of things from happening.
Many of us these days hold and put a lot of content of ours on, cloud storage. As the consumers, what I should be aware of, and also in a situation like this where a data breach could happen, how the companies protect themselves.
So think of this way now, because the Dropbox is, at the end of the day, mechanisms of cybersecurity, they're not like very different, like going to do that, but the application of that is different, right? This one is like, where you use an online mechanism where you put all this files like Dropbox, right? You share files, you upload the files. And also certain, like in the cases you have e-signatures and stuff, like, which is very common method, like, okay, in order to like really make sure because the one who did it like sign, it's kind of like that kind of authenticity.
Correct.
Which of course now we have blockchain and other mechanisms coming into place that will like kind of be a good segue into more authenticity around it. Never been said, when you're looking at the cloud services like this and exchanging the data, this really goes back to like, how much of what kind of critical data you're really using. Are you just relying on the native protocols that those cloud service providers are using, or are you demanding like additional factor?
Right.
Everybody has Google Authenticate, like a mobile device. You can have Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, or those things. Enable that service with that. So that even though like, the e-signature compromise or all those things really happen, you don't fall victim of like really giving away all the data.
In another news that made headlines in the area of data breach was one of the most anticipated news of Verizon 2024 Data Breach Investigations Report, which is DBIR. That got released, which provides a comprehensive analysis of the global cybersecurity landscape, with insights drawn from nearly 30,500 incidents and record of 10,626 confirmed data breaches across 94 countries. The report offers valuable insights for organizations seeking to bolster their defenses against ever-evolving threats. So these facts-based data, how much are they helpful, Desiree?
Well, it is very helpful. It is always good to know what's out there and what your biggest threats are. And it's nice when someone kind of gives you a summary of what's transpired, because what's happening next door could be happening to you as well.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's very helpful. And I loved how, again, they highlighted the number one issue being vulnerabilities. Like, our systems are still vulnerable.
Right.
And it's again about doing something about those vulnerabilities, being proactive. What are we doing? How are we protecting the data? And what will we do differently now that we have this information? Again, what do we do? What do we change today?
Right. Lalit, what are some of the areas which are fact-driven where more and more research is required when it comes to data breach?
I think this research is required in all different facets. more proactive you can be. Big data is king. Like, you understand, you get the threat intelligence you can apply to your environment. Now, understand Verizon has been doing this study for over a decade plus.
Correct.
And thanks to they touch all facets.
Right.
They touch every industry. They see what's happening in financial services, what's trending in healthcare, what's trending in public sector, the government
Finance
services.
and all.
Then they look at from the different angle, technology, innovation, like what's going on, or what the bad actors are really going after, what kind of attacks are really going to take in more precedence, and other things.
Right.
The another element in this report, if you look at the human actor, still remains, where people are falling victim through the phishing emails and other things, common. And we've been emphasizing the need for more security awareness and training, or more mechanisms to really educate or alert people before they take any action. It was striking that within 26 seconds is on an average time when people fall victim of a phishing email and still falling. There's nothing we can prevent that from happening, right? So understand this analysis that comes from relevant examples. I encourage everyone, doesn't matter which industry, where you come from, take the data, consume that, find the parallels, and make sure you're learning from others' experiences.
Right.
This kind of reports really help you educate in a better way, and then figure out the common vulnerabilities or the common threats, apply that, and fix that in your environments.
Viewers, we're going to take a quick short break over here. On the other side of the break, we'll resume our conversation with Lalit and Desiree. Remember, today we're talking about news that made headlines in April 2024. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back, Lalit and Desiree. Once again, we are in the third segment of our news analysis episode, where we're discussing about news that made headlines in April 2024. So without further ado, I'll move on to another news that made headlines, which is about exotic visit. Android malware campaign targets South Asia via fake apps. Now, India and Pakistan particularly was on target. So cybersecurity researchers at ESET have uncovered an active Android malware campaign dubbed Exotic Visit that has been primarily targeting users in South Asia, particularly those in India and Pakistan. The campaign, ongoing since November 2021, is orchestrated by a previously unknown threat group tracked as virtual invaders. I wonder how these names also come for the threat actors, Desiree, what would you say?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So I think, you as a consumer, we always have to be careful on what we're downloading.
Right.
You gotta recognize that a lot of these applications, they're free, they're available and easily accessible to us, but they are not necessarily safe and secure. Just because they are available through, your Google Play doesn't mean they've been vetted. It doesn't mean that they have passed any security requirements or regulations. So you're basically just accepting something as it is, and when you do that, you accept good and bad with it.
Yeah.
So being aware that that may not be safe information is good to know, because you probably do not need that extra app on your phone. What are you using it for?
Well, Desiree, these are not about the extra apps only, but these are some of the common platforms such as WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, Gmail. These are some of the common platforms which pretty much everybody has them on the phone. So what would you say, Lalit?
So I think Desiree touched a very important point. Okay, let's put a physical analogy. You see a luggage lying on the floor, would you pick it up?
No, because it's
Why not?
unidentified. I can't do that.
All right, you see 5 strangers walking, will you go and start talking to them?
No, not at all, yeah.
So physical system, you've been groomed to know what to deal with, what to engage with.
Yeah.
How come digital ecosystem you're so illiterate?
Right.
This is the lack of literacy, okay, you're thinking about these forums, the apps, right? And now I'll tell you who's at most vulnerable. The youngsters.
Right.
Or the people who are not as educated in the IT systems, right? Many people will start oh, you should have, and now listen, different cultures have different things. I want to make it more relevant to the Indian culture.
Right.
Bhagavad Gita mein naya updesh aaya hai, sabhi download karo.
Right.
Everybody's floating around now getting that download.
Right.
Because this is happening. Nobody knows, okay, what has been put in that.
Right.
Authenticity of that. But people are following everyone else. Like,
And
no,
that's
they're-
why this threat is called as exotic.
Exactly, for the very same reason. But again, apply the same common principles. They are so relevant. And what they really do is, think of this way, for me to once install this thing on your app.
Now, this one is the news about CISA. So CISA issues emergency Microsoft hack alert after Russian escalation. The U.S. cybersecurity agency, CISA, has urgently expanded its mitigation orders around the Russian hacking group Midnight Blizzard's escalating breach of Microsoft systems. Originally an emergency directive limited to affected federal agencies on April 2nd, CISA made the rare move of publicizing its guidance more broadly on Thursday. This follows Microsoft disclosing the hackers exploited stolen credentials from the initial January intrusion to significantly ramp up password spray attacks against customers by 10 times in February alone.
Yeah. So I feel like organization like Microsoft has a bigger and larger moral responsibility. I wouldn't say that anywhere.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I can be politically saying, yeah, every organization can be breached. I'm sorry. The financial resources and the kind of like, even the national funding and other things, these organizations have to be more role models for many others.
Right.
When you oh, there were like compromised credentials or like, it doesn't matter where it was. How would that happen? The line of defenses have to be protected. In fact, complement with like 2 months back, there was another news where internally there was no MFA within Microsoft environment.
Right.
We all heard about that. That's basic hygiene. How do you let that happen? Now, great organization, I just feel like we have more to offer so that other organizations can follow your footsteps, right? Yes, good that we are like making awareness, and everything else, but I'm sorry, accident has already happened.
Right.
You're not going to
It's too
recover
late, yeah.
from that. It's too late.
Yeah.
If you would have done this then I can understand this is happening.
Right.
The threat intelligence should be going to everyone right away. That's CISA's responsibility and organizations.
Right.
Listen, this is alert, and then also in a summarized way. Something that I can hit. Don't give me a full essay or full write-ups.
Right.
Give me a very summarized way so I know what I need to attack. 1, 2, 3, go do this.
Right.
Complement it with public-private partnerships, make that happen. So it's a kind of awareness, but awareness with the larger organizations, I think there's more to be done as a moral and a social responsibility.
Right. Now, the next two news, I remember a few episodes ago we were discussing about, many of us leave our credit cards on file with, airline carriers, with hotel industry and, entertainment industry. So many places we leave our business, credit cards on file. Now, this one is of Roku resets passwords for 576,000 accounts after credential stuffing attack. Streaming video platform Roku has warned customers that a staggering 576,000 users' accounts were compromised due to a large-scale credential stuffing attack. And another news, Omni Hotels confirms data breach after Good Friday ransomware attack. So two of these news of different industry, hospitality and entertainment. What would you say there, Sarah?
Well, I'd say for consumers specifically, you can only do what you can do on your part.
Right.
And so something that you can do on a regular basis when there is a breach, or just get yourself in the consistent habit of updating your credentials. So even if someone were to get, say, there's a breach and now we have access to your account, if you're frequently updating your passwords, they still won't be able to access it. So even if that was lost, you can still protect yourself to a certain level.
Credential stuffing, which Roku experienced, is one of the common problems. How many online services you have, how much common passwords you have.
Right, right.
If one of those passwords is compromised, I think there are multiple of them are compromised, and you're using the same for the Roku service, for example.
Right.
Guess what? Number one, defense is broken now. I didn't have to go to Roku, do this, but I compromised somewhere else, brought it here. On top of that, you don't have any line of defense, second line of defense, no multi-factor authentication, nothing. Right. Guess what? Now I'm seamlessly getting into your account.
Right.
Now the e-commerce providers, financial service, they're going to smart, when you display the data, they don't display all the account information, which is a common mechanism, which is great, right? But still, it's in our hands, how we segregate, what's more critical and what service are constantly changing passwords. or having multi-factor authentication enabled on any service I do. These are things as a consumer
Right.
we should be doing so that I don't have force into any kind of negative impact, right? Omni one was actually a little better news. Even though they went to the ransomware attack, they were asked for ransom, they probably didn't know the ransom, they were able to recover and back up data
Right.
and everything
Right.
and put in that. So I think that should be a good example of, okay, even though because bad actors are coming after you, they
Correct.
have to see that. Oh, I held your data hosted. Okay, don't worry, I don't need it. I'm recovering this from here. Now, other businesses should be taking cue from there. That if this is happening in this industry, it could be happening in another one.
Well, thank you so much for giving that knowledge and information and sharing your expertise with our viewers. Viewers, this brings us to the end of our today's episode. Remember, CyberWatch is brought to you by DigitalXForce and iTrustXForce. If you have any questions, queries, concerns, or if you want us to cover any particular topic in our episodes, you can write us at cyberwatch@tvasiausa.com. And if you want to reach out to Lalit Ahluwalia, Lalit, what's the best way out?
Through our websites and the portals, DigitalXForce.com and iTrustXForce.com, through our social media channels on the LinkedIn and other areas, we happily able to assist or bring others who can assist you.
Yeah, remember our motto at CyberWatch is also let's fight the dark side together. So let's make this happen. Lalit and Desiree, thank you so very much for joining us on this episode of CyberWatch. Until next time, this is Vikas Nangia signing off. Thank you for joining us.